Hi everyone and welcome to Archie Science Show. Today's episode is looking at elements and compounds. Now this is the second part of two videos, so if you haven't seen the first video I suggest you go watch that now. In the first video what we did was look at what elements and compounds are. Elements are substances that are made up of only one type of atom, for example oxygen, gold, helium, and there's other elements that are on the periodic table. Compounds are substances that are made up of two or more different elements chemically joined together. For example, we've got water. Water is made up of hydrogen and oxygen atoms that are chemically joined together, which is why the formula is H2O. In today's video, we're going to look at how scientists name different compounds. Let's start with a simple example, the compound NaCl. Na is the symbol for the element sodium, and Cl is the symbol for the element chlorine. So if I was to draw a diagram of this, we would have one sodium atom for every chlorine atom. To name this compound, we start with the name of the first element, which is sodium, and then we add the name of the second element, which is chlorine, but we change the end of the name to end in IDE. So we call it sodium chloride. I'm going to make a list of rules on the side of my board. And the first one is going to be about this. So for compounds, with two elements, like sodium chloride, change the ending to IDE. Ide. This technique works with other compounds. For example, if we had a compound made up of atoms of lithium and fluorine with the chemical formula LiF, it would be called lithium fluoride. If we had a compound made up of atoms of potassium and iodine with the formula Ki, it would be called potassium iodide. When this changes is if the compound has more than one atom of the second element. A common example is CO2, which has two oxygen atoms for every carbon atom. If I was to draw it, I could draw it like this, with the black atom representing carbon and the white atoms representing oxygen. So that would be a molecule of CO2. To name this, we call it carbon, for the first element, dioxide. Carbon dioxide. And that di part is a prefix that means two. So it's got two atoms of oxygen in each molecule. There is another compound which is very similar to this, which has the formula CO. The only difference is it has only one atom of oxygen in a molecule. So what we do for this one, instead of just calling it carbon oxide, because that would be confusing, because carbon dioxide is more common, we call it carbon monoxide. And that makes it clear because this mono bit means one. So it has one atom of oxygen in each molecule. These parts here, the di and the mono, are called prefixes, and they tell us the number of atoms of the element in each molecule. So I'm going to add this to my rules. So use prefixes. So the ones we've already got are mono, meaning one. We've got di, that means two. We've got tri, that means three, which we haven't gone over, but it makes sense, tri, like tricycle is three. And we've also got one that you need to know that's tetra, which means four. Now let's have some practice. I'm going to write a list of a mixture of compound names and some chemical formula. When I write this list, I want you to pause the video, and for each name that I write down, I want you to try and work out what the formula is and write this down. And for each formula that I write down, I want you to try and work out what the name is. So here's the list. Did you manage to get that? Let's go through them. Sodium fluoride would be NaF, sodium and fluorine. AgI, to name that one, we would put silver for Ag, and I is iodine, but we end it in IDE, so we put silver iodide. A lot of these where there's only one of the second element, we don't always need to write the mono. MgS would be magnesium for Mg, sulfide, lithium iodide would be Li for lithium, and capital I for the iodine in lithium iodide. Make sure you get your capital letters in the right place. So each chemical symbol should only have one capital letter. So the chemical symbol for lithium only has a capital L, and the chemical symbol for iodine has a capital I. PCl3 is phosphorus for the P. And then, because there's 3 chlorines, we call it trichloride. Remember, it's ending in IDE again. So phosphorus trichloride. Carbon tetrabromide would be C for carbon. And then bromine has Br. But there's 4 of them, so we put a little 4 there. Make sure the numbers are in the correct place. They should be small and hanging just below the line. NO2 is nitrogen for the N, and because there's 2 oxygen atoms in each molecule, we call it nitrogen dioxide. Now this one's a little bit of a challenge because there's obviously 2 aluminium atoms for every 3 oxygen atoms, but because this is the most common type of aluminium and oxygen joined together, we just call it aluminium oxide. Before we finish, let's look at some slightly more complicated examples. So MgSO4, NaNO3, and CaCO3. For these, all you need to do is know what these parts are called. So these parts are quite common, and they have specific names. So this is called sulfate. This is called nitrate, NO3. CO3 is called carbonate. And you'll notice that they've got different endings to them. They all end in ate, and that's because they've got oxygen in them. So for this whole compound here, we call it magnesium sulfate. For this whole compound here, we call it sodium nitrate. And for this whole compound here, we call it calcium carbonate. Well, that's it from me for now. I'm going back to playing Animal Crossing, and I hope you all have a lovely week.